Welcome to this special episode of Frequency Matters, the RF and Microwave Update Series. I'm Pat Hindle. I'm here with my co-host Gary Lerude and special guest Satish Dhanasekaran, President of the Communications Solutions Group at Keysight Technologies. Welcome, Satish.
Thank you, Patrick and Gary. I hope both of you are staying safe and healthy through this time.
Satish, as sub-6 gigahertz MIMO networks are being primarily the configurations that are released first in 5G, what are the primary test challenges that you're currently seeing there?
Yeah, I think even with sub-6 gigahertz, as you pointed out, especially as you get into mid-band implementations, massive MIMO, becomes much more of a standard necessity. As you move even higher in frequencies, closer to 4.9 gigahertz, you're really relying on using MIMO schemes for maintaining your link budget and capacity and coverage KPIs. And what we find is customers are very interested to characterize massive MIMO in the lab so that they're able to accurately determine how their devices and network or base stations will perform in the real world. And so over-the-air testing becomes much more important, especially to determine the performance of their device in the live network. And so that's a lot of area where we are working with our customers. The other areas are, as much as massive MIMO has been deployed, there's clearly need to go higher in scale, and therefore testing becomes even more challenging. And the test throughputs, even in R&D, is becoming a very important factor for our customers. So we're actually enabling that by disaggregating our hardware and our measurement IP, and allowing the measurement IP to reside in the cloud. That allows us to do faster captures and process information quicker, especially as customers scale their MIMO topologies. The other area where we see innovation in 5G, not just restricted to sub-6 gigahertz, but I think this is very important, is in energy optimization. I mean, you can imagine battery performance, it becoming a bigger factor for customers as they go into 5G. And we're still at the very front end of that, and in realizing battery and price or cost optimizations as well. So despite the fact that everybody, there is a notion that 5G is here and it's already deployed, we see considerable innovations that will have to happen to get 5G to the end state where it can be adopted broadly for cost, energy, and performance reasons that I just mentioned.
How much 5G millimeter wave activity are you seeing? And what are we learning about using millimeter wave spectrum for mobile and fixed wireless access communications?
Yeah, we're seeing tremendous interest in the ecosystem to adopt millimeter wave. I think if you would ask the question 2 years ago, people said, well, it's going to be really hard. Maybe there were some business model questions as well folks had, but given the successes in auctions that have occurred and spectrum availability, spectrum policies have been, especially in the US, with FCC being very favorably poised to open up spectrum in higher frequencies for commercial use, we think it's gaining broader adoption. We see that in our customer base that have hired talent because many of the engineers, as you know, in cellular communications, especially in commercial arenas, have largely been, let's say, working in sub-6 gigahertz frequencies. And so it's a significant retooling in terms of hiring talent, hiring equipment, and buying equipment that are test and measurement equipment to be able to test the performance of millimeter wave devices. So we see a lot of activity there, planning for the future ramps in the industry. We think it's exciting that the industry is actually looking at this as a standard feature. Some of the 5G devices which have NSA already have started to implement 28 gigahertz radios, phased arrays, and while the performance today might be limited to the coverage areas where you have it, and so it'll be fairly restricted, but as we start to scale this in large metro areas, we expect that millimeter wave will become widely used, and people will start to get this sort of experience that they can get today in much more static situations. For fixed wireless, it's clear Verizon has really put a stake in the ground and is starting to increase the coverage there. And I think as spectrum becomes more available, that's a much more let's say, clearer use case that has clear economic value for some operators in some parts of the world that can deploy it and get us faster speeds to the home. But I'm equally excited by the work we're seeing in the industry across chipset companies, device companies, and NEMs to enable mobile millimeter wave, let's say, capabilities.
Satish, we hope that everyone at Keysight is doing well. How is the company handling the remote working situation?
The company, it's founded, as you know, we're the founding business of HP, Bill and Dave Packard. So from our roots, we're a people-first company. But you start to see that in the way we lead. Our CEO, Ron Nersessian, has been in this business all his career, and his first concern was for the health and safety of our employees. I remember we were in New York Stock Exchange on March 5th. Giving our investors a preview for, it was our Investor Day event, preview for the company's future direction. And while we were returning from that trip, that was the first time we started to hear about COVID not just being a China event, but maybe becoming more of an international event with significant concerns or risks, I should say, in Europe and for our U.S. destinations. So we did not wait for many of the counties or countries even to declare stay at home or shelter in place or orders. We actually took a proactive stance, and Ron was, very clear that we would want our employees safe to make all our employees work from home. And we in fact shut down our manufacturing facility for a few weeks until we could determine that whether things were safe in doing so. We also, as you know, design and test a lot of solutions for aerospace and defense customers, and therefore we've been, categorized in many parts of the world as an essential service. So we were operating under that mode in a very limited fashion to take care of our customers in the defense industry, in communications industries, in healthcare industries. So we continue to make contributions to the essential services industries as to enable them to continue to be successful. We also, taken a proactive stance to help our communities, and I think that's something we're proud of as we go through this. In making donations of both, protective equipment and also monetary contributions from the company and the employees. But overall, I would say we're very proud of the way our employees have handled the situation. Working from home can be challenging and isolating for many folks, especially in Europe, where it was pretty severe and people had to stay in smaller apartments and were locked in for longer periods of time. But I think the culture of the company, which relies on collaborative fabric, really shined through this time. And we were able to keep our employees engaged to a very high level through this crisis. And we're able to, turn this sort of unfortunate event into a few positives. As I mentioned to many of my friends, there's not been a time in my career over the last 10 years where I have not had to travel for 90 days in a row. And I know this is true for me, for you, for many of my colleagues. And we're all finding a little bit of a respite from travel and maybe adding a few years back to our life this way. And we're finding new ways of working. And the pace of innovation has not slowed, either in our company or at the industries we serve. The communications is becoming even more critical to society. And through all of this, we're finding that there will be advances that will be needed, both on the infrastructure side and the way these technologies are deployed to make it more robust, given how important it is for society. And therefore, I think any pause in adoption of technologies here is only in the short term as folks deal with the COVID crisis. But as the situation gets better, we'll start to see a bigger scale adoption of these technologies. And so the rate of innovation in the industry or in Keysight has not slowed. In fact, we feel like through this work at home, we're getting greater productivity because folks don't have to commute as much. And we're now able to reach people differently. We're able to work far more efficiently in some cases, especially with software engineers where the productivity has actually gone up dramatically for us.
We've been speaking with Satish Dhanasekaran, president of Keysight's Communications Solutions Group. Satish, thank you for your time today and sharing your insight.